everyone, how you doing tonight? Just going to do a little camera check and testing the sound on both. Get a little extra sunlight coming in because with the sun being a different spot, excuse me, at different times of the day, so just want to make sure we can see good. Put my hand out of the way. Okay. Gonna check the equipment. How's everybody doing today? It's a sunny, not too hot day. It was hotter yesterday. Here in New Hampshire. Take every sunny, warm day we can get. Let me get my tools out. I stopped in the middle of what I was doing. So this bag, for anyone that sees it, that's one of our Saturday sew-alongs. A few months back, probably more than a few months back. If you look in the Saturday sew-along playlist, you'll see it. But it's my favorite. It's got fabric on the inside is measuring tape, but it holds my rotary cutter, my little roller iron, a little ruler, my littler favorite ruler, some marking pens and odds and ends, but it's just the right size. Lengthways, it's about 9 inches, so it's perfect. And I took the same fabric and made little ends, so it looks like your measuring tape. That's what I was trying to say, measuring tape. Oh, I better leave this open in case there's something more I need. I don't know if anybody is sewing along. Oh, look, I got a little sunburn. I don't know if anybody is sewing along with me today. Let's see, what time is it? Oh, we got a few more minutes. So, and I'll tell you now while you're waiting. So this is a small portion of this bigger one, that bigger log cabin block. And I keep it in my resource book because now and again, when I get started, I have a moment of which side, this is our middle, which side am I going on? Not that it makes any difference, but I don't know. I just keep it and I turn it over and I go, oh yeah, that's what I did. Once you get started, it's easy. It's getting, the first two are easy, but then deciding which side this first long one goes on. And it doesn't make any difference, but you want to do it always the same way in your quilt. Or maybe not. So a lot of times when I have something like this, I just keep a sample. So why stress my brain? I can just pull out the sample and turn it over and go, oh yeah, that's what I did. So that's why you saw that sitting there. Get that out of the way. To see if we have any people that are chatting tonight. Sometimes we don't. Excuse me. I know, do this every time. I should sing like for a half hour before I start. Because you wouldn't want me to sing after I start. Trust me there. So we'll just give it. Oh, hi, Persis. How you doing tonight? Did you sew today? Work today? Grocery shop? Mop the floors? Did you do anything exciting? No, I don't. I'm not implying that those things are exciting. I was thinking, did you do anything exciting instead of that kind of stuff? I should have finished my whole thought there. So if you're gonna stitch along, you just need like one strip of, I don't know, 3 lights, 3 darks. I lied. 4 lights, 4 darks. Salvage to salvage. Or I work from fat quarters, so I'm going to show you how I work from fat quarters. So I'm going to go ahead and start simply because the first part is I'm just going to yak about fabric and stuff. So hi to anybody that just joined in. Working on the log cabin block. And before I start chain piecing a bunch of blocks at once, Persis did gardening today. I love gardening. Before I start chain piecing a bunch of blocks, I always make one block just so it gets me in the log cabin brain mode. But no matter what I'm chain piecing or no matter what I'm piecing together, I always complete one block because I try to chain piece as often as I can, even if it's just in certain sections. So I'm just going to set that up there. And this block is roughly, it'll be 13 finished. Isn't that non-size? Yeah, because it's 13 and a half, so it'll be 13 finished. So I had, and this isn't all of it, but I had a fat quarter bundle. And I thought, oh, that's really pretty. And I don't think I've made anything with greens in this. I never know. Is this aqua, turquoise? I think it's aqua. I get the two mixed up. And I found in my pile this kind of solid one green guy by itself. I have one other green, but that was it for actual greens in the fat quarter bundle. So I'm going to use that for my center blocks. So you can see, so all my centers will be the same. All my blocks are not going to be the same. They're going to be lights on one side, darks on the other. But because I have a fat quarter bundle and I want to use some of everything in it, they're not all going to be the same exact fabrics going around. That makes sense. So let me move that out of the way. Okay, so oh, hi, Rhonda. Thanks for joining in. So my strips are cut 2 inches. So normally it's 2 inches by width of fabric, which is salvage to salvage. In this case, I have fat quarters, and I had one out, and I'll get to how I cut it in a second. So if your strips are 2 inches wide, then your center block will be a 2-inch square. If your strips are 1.5 inches wide, then your center square is 1.5 by 1.5. Your 2.5, so on and so forth. So whatever your strip size is, width, your center square is going to be that width size squared. Okay? Now, on a fat quarter, again, and you know me, I don't get particular about a lot of things, but I do get particular about how I cut my fat quarters. And I know I probably discussed it before. So a fat quarter, if you think of this is how a fat quarter works. They take a 1/2 yard of fabric, 18 inches wide, 42 width of fabric, or salvage to salvage. And this is your salvage, and there's another one at the other end when you have the whole strip. So they take a 1/2 yard of fabric, and they cut it in half at the fold. So it used to be all fabric was 44, so you knew your fat quarter was going to be 18, 1/2 yard, by 22, half of 44. But they aren't all 44 anymore, so I always work off the assumption that I only have like 20, 21 inches, and I can be pleasantly surprised. So when I cut this, no matter what I'm cutting, my width is this way. So I'm sitting here, so the salvage is facing you. My length is going away from me, and my width is going in line with me, okay? Because I have 20, let's say I have 21 inches this way, and sometimes I'll have 22, and I have 18 inches across. No matter what, I'm going to have 18 inches across. It's never going to be like 22 by 22. That would be really nice, but it's not. So when I cut my fabric, I try to keep my length until the bitter end. And the reason I do that is many years ago, I'd say 2, so it's probably, 10. I wasn't paying any attention. I cut this way, and then I needed one long skinny piece, and I had cut my length off. Once I make one cut, I've lost my length. So when I cut anything now, I cut left to right, right to left, but I cut this way. So I'm saving that length right to the last possible minute that I can. And you'll be surprised how often you need something that's a little longer than 18. So I just, out of habit now for many years, I just automatically do that. Because the second I don't do it is when I need a little 1-inch strip, 20 inches or 21 inches, and I've hacked that off, and now the best I got is, 18. So that's how I do mine. When I'm cutting a log cabin, whether I have yardage, a quarter yard salvage to salvage, I only cut a couple strips at a time. Because I remember one time thought I was being smart, and I cut the fabric all up, and I didn't need, like, a third of it I didn't need, and I had all these strips left. So let that be a lesson to you. So back to the fat quarter. So it's 18, or it's a half yard wide. They cut it at the fold, so it becomes about 21 as a rule, 21. It's still, I'm going to say cubic inch wise. I know that's probably not the correct terminology, but I still have, surface wise, I still have a quarter of a yard of fabric. Quarter of a yard of fabric is 9 by 41, 40, so 9 by 42. So if I cut the 9 by 42 at the fold, I have a fat eighth, which is 9 by 18. 9 by 21. So when you need more width for whatever you're working on, you want a fat quarter. But if you're just doing strips and you need length, buy a quarter yard of fabric, because generally it's cheaper than a fat quarter. So that's your fat quarter lesson for today. Oh, and I just dropped all my things on the floor. So hopefully that makes sense. I know in the videos I tend to give you little tidbits of information that doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing, but it does help you when you're working with fat quarters. Okay, so I need a pile of these little squares because that's where I'm going to start. Now here I have some of my leftovers from when I did this block, and I think I did a couple more when I did a sew along using the Gemini cutter to cut strips, and we just did one. So I had some pieces left over, and I'll show you once we get a couple of blocks done. These aren't going to go to waste. It's easier for me to start with full lengths of strips, so you understand strip piecing better. So strip piecing or chain piecing, whichever one it is. Strip piecing obviously is strips. Chain piecing is when you have a block and all the blocks are the same, or you have 6 blocks that are the same. To do piece 1 to piece 2, you can do piece 1 to piece 2 6 times. Then you add piece 3 6 times. Add piece 4 6 times. So chain piecing is you're chaining along building your blocks, you're sewing part 1 to part 2 on all your blocks, or on 6 of them. I wouldn't do like 40 at once. That's too much commitment for me. When I'm strip piecing, I'm piecing with strips. So you can really call it whichever you want. Oh, thanks, Rhonda. You like my interesting little tidbits? Well, I think it's important to understand how a fat quarter is, and really always try to cut, saving the length as long as you can. Okay, so we got our little squares. I'm going to set this guy aside. Now, like I said, I always make 1 first before I commit myself to making like 10 at once, because if I do 1 wrong, I do 10 wrong. So if I have my 1 and I want to use it as my example or my template or my reference, I have that 1 done. I like how it looks, and that's fine, especially if you're going to use the same fabric so you can see the order that you did them in. So I'm going to set that over there. So I think you can still see it there. I've got my strips hanging there, not the best place, but I had to hang them somewhere. So we're going to start. So let's make 4. We don't want to overcommit ourselves here. So let's make 4. So I want to have 4 of my squares, and I can set the rest aside somewhere here. Okay? And then I want to start with a light fabric. So you bring it up like that. How's that? You can see that pretty good. So we're going here. There we go. And next we're going right next to the green. So we're going to do 2 rows of each color. So 2 rows of this light, then 2 rows on the dark, and 2 rows on the light, 2 rows on the dark. So we're just going around in a circle. Once you get going past this little first part, it's going to be easy. So I guess I can set that. Okay, so now you can see our first part. So we need to take our green and attach it to a light strip. So I guess I can I'll do the same one. Oh, caught it. Almost fell off the table, down into the oblivion. Okay, so if you're using a whole strip, 40, 42, then obviously your strip's going to be longer, and you'd be able to get more on, but we're going to just do 4. And I suggest probably when you first start doing this, just so you don't get too nervous. Did I lose one already? Crying out loud. Does that ever happen to you? So we're just going to do 4 at a time, and I just want to quickly press. I got a little crease there. Okay, so machine setup, regular sewing thread. I've got a neutral color, kind of a beigey color. Gray would work too. Beiges, off-whites, and grays are neutral colors because you can't keep matching, like changing your thread every row. That's for dressmaking, not for this kind of sewing. So regular sewing thread, top and bottom. I have a Microtex 7010 needle. Had a moment there. 7010 needle. Just for explanation, because I probably haven't done it in a while. A Microtex needle, I think of it as an old school sharp needle. So a universal needle, because it's made to be universal, meaning on different types of fabric, has a rounded end to it, tip to it. So it's not going through the fabric. It's not sharply going through the fabric. It's kind of pushing its way through the fabric. So for all quilting using cottons, I always use the Microtex 7010. Don't need it any bigger. If your sewing machine has a threader, automatic threader of some sort, you can't go below a 70 needle because the little wire won't go through. Okay, so regular sewing thread, microtex needle, 70-10. I have my 1/4-inch foot with a guide on today. And I think that's it. I'm going to be ready to go. So let me switch the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my strip down. And let me just get my pedal, because my pedal's under the camera tripod. So I'm just going to put my foot down and put my needle down, because now, see, that gives me, I call that that's my third hand. So my hands are here, this is getting held. And I'm going to put my square down, right sides together. And if you have the pivot feature on your machine, which means the pivot is if you take your foot off the pedal, sorry, I was adjusting the focus. If you take your foot off the pedal, your needle will go down and your foot will come up a little ways. And then when you hit the pedal, your foot will come down and go on. And that way you don't have to keep raising and lowering your presser foot yourself. So let me get over this. Let me see if I can come in this way. I'm just going to adjust for a minute just so I can find a place where I can stand. I think that's a pretty good view. Okay. Did that, then I quickly took out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sew my first strip. And when I get near the end of that strip, I'm going to stop. Place my next square right side down, and I just got, you can see, I've just got a little space in between them. Not cutting my thread, just going to keep right on going. Get to the end of that one, put another one down. Just making sure it's lined up here. It really should be lined up on both sides. Let me keep my hand out of your way in case it gets fuzzy. Okay, and my next one. And if you were doing more, you can keep going until you got to the end of your strip. So you could go wild and do, if you have long strips, you could maybe do 20 at a time with everyone. Okay? So let me switch the camera back. So this is what we have. And I have extra space there, and I tend to do that. You could really get them closer. You'd have less trimming, but I don't mind that. So let me get my ruler. So I'm just going to trim, see if I can do it so I'm facing you without me getting in your way. How about if I go on just a little bit of angle? So I want to make sure my ruler's straight, this here and here. And I'm just going to go down the line and trim that one side for now. And I can put that in, in my pile for later. Then I can just turn it around and trim it. And again, if you put these closer together, oh, let me get a drink. Sorry. If you place them closer together when you sew, you won't have to trim this side. I just want you to be careful that when you put them closer together, don't overlap them, because then you got a real problem. So I don't mind in the beginning taking this. I don't mind taking this little extra effort. Okay, so now we're going to press this open, and let's see. We want to go to the light side. Yeah. So we want the light on top. So we're pressing away from the center. Oh. Red thread. I'm not stitching with red thread today because I don't have to show you my stitches for this kind of project. I mean, you can see them if you want to. There they are. And this is actually going to be a quilt. Okay? So we've got our 4 pieces. And if we put the one we sewed last, let me see if I get this right. The one we sewed last, facing us. Gonna be right? No, I'm gonna do it this way. I'm gonna have the center towards me because I'm looking at my sample. Okay. After this one, you'll see it becomes easier. Now, I normally would continue on with my strip, but I'm going to get a new one just so you can see all of them at one time on the strip. So I don't want you to get a strip every time. And then I'll show you afterwards how if I use up this strip, well, let me just use it. What the heck? We're adults now. We can handle it. Oh, no, I was right the first time. So it is facing towards me. I was thinking too hard. Because the strip, normally this strip would be on top when you sew. But we're putting this strip down on the machine and flipping these onto it. Excuse me. So let me switch over. And that way I can show you exactly. See if I've got some more of these. I'm checking to see if I got more of that fabric strips. No, I don't. All right. So I'm going to start out with my little short piece. Put my needle down. So this is my strip. Long or short, this is my strip. These are the pieces I already have done. So I'm just going to flip, put right sides together. And you can see my seam allowance is coming towards me, so that's not going to be an issue. And let me get it started here. And I can see I was a little off. There we go. Okay, so I've got enough room to get one more on. Normally, if you're doing log cabin or blocks, you've got, a whole of long strips. I tend to be a fat quarter collector. So see, I just have this little piece left. So I can, to keep everybody together, I'm just going to stitch to the end of that strip, start the next strip, So then they're all attached, everybody's attached together. And make sure when you push that up, you're not pushing it up so it's like bending up by where you're not jamming it against the needle and then you've got a crease there. Turn my speed up again. Here's my next one. This time I'll butt it a little closer so you can see how you can have it. Okay, it's pretty mindless after a while. So see how I just had this one little piece here, so I just kept stitching, just so if I was doing a lot of them, I'm just keeping them all together. So I'm going to trim them up, and again, I want to make sure that my ruler is straight. So I just had that, see, that's all that I had left over. And I thought I got a little closer, but apparently I didn't. That's okay. But here again, it's not going to go to waste. So I'm just going to turn this and trim off that other side. And like I said, I know I'm repeating, but if you're at it and you get going a little bit, and you're getting used to it, you can butt them up closer so that when you make that trim, that first trim, there's not a second trim. But in the beginning, if you're not sure, just do a second trim. It's not that big. We get it in our heads that we have to do it like whoever we got in our mind does it. No, you're gonna do it how it works for you. So if you need to take a little more time, a little extra effort, but you feel better about it and you're not stressed, well, that's the way to go. Okay. So light on top, because remember we're pressing the seam away from the center. And yes, you could use your iron, but you know, I caution you when something is this small. See, I couldn't pick that up because I was on the wrong side. It was telling me not to do that. And if you want to, at each of these steps of your 10 blocks or whatever it is, you can make sure you're the right, everybody's the same size each step that you go. Okay? Now it gets easy. So if we go back and think about the first two go together, doesn't matter which side, because no matter which way you turn it, you can get it right. But you're going to have the light fabric that you added facing you when you're at the machine. So when you flip it over onto the strip, this is facing you. Now, the last one added is facing you, and now it's easy to remember because it's always going to be the one with no seam. Seam, no seam. Seam, seam. So the one facing you is the last one you sewed, but it's also the one that has no seam. That's how I remember it. Okay, so now we did two lights. Now we need to do darks. So let's see. I'll pick this one. Yep, and I just got to give it a little press because I had everything folded up. Now, I know I always tell you not to do this, but sometimes in this case, now you know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to make sure we cut our salvage off. I don't want you getting in trouble. Because you know the first thing will happen is you'll sew in that seam allowance and then you'll be swearing at me. Sticking pins in my voodoo doll. So make sure, and you probably should cut your seam allowances off before you start, but a lot of times we just get excited to get started. So let me just set that there. So now we're going to put this strip down and we're going to be flipping on, and remember, no seam facing us. So let me just check and see if there's any questions, which really means I'm going to get a drink before I start coughing again. Okay, we good? I take a drink and ask everybody if we're good. You should take a drink the same time I do. Oh boy, if you're drinking wine by the end of the class, you'll be good. Okay? Now, if you really want to, you can line your very first one up with this edge if you feel inclined to do that. Let me move this a little this way so that you can see. Because I would normally probably have my extension table on, so I would have these laying right next to me. Okay? I don't have enough room because the extension table for this is too big for my area. But if you've got your extension table, just put these right next to you. Excuse me. So remember, no seam facing up, flip it over right sides together. And I'm just pushing it up to where the needle is, but I'm making sure it's nice and flat. And again, see my seam is facing towards me, so it's not going to flip back up. So let me just get this back. I have to, the camera has to focus on something. I'm trying to find something that, okay. As long as I don't put my hand here, we're all set. But I would normally have both hands here. So I'm going to be the one-hand sewer right now. And you notice I move my hand over here because there's nothing to hold on to on the side. Okay, next one, just flipping it over. All the little soldiers are going to be exactly the same. And that's why I tell you, because you're going to do them all exactly the same, you want them to be all right and not all wrong. Because whatever they're going to be, they're all going to be the same. Okay, pretty easy sewing. Okay, so I did these. You can see I did these closer together. So you can't see the strip underneath in between. So let me start. Look, I was going to cut with that. That won't work, will it? Take the time to line up your lines on your ruler. So now when I go in between, actually this way, all I have to, oh no, I was going to say I was going to have to snip it, but I forgot. I've got a whole strip under there, don't I? So I'm just moving this guy a little bit out of the way. just so I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. And so that was all I had left over. Okay, so we're going to press again. So let's see which way we go. Okay. So it's what we just sewed is on the bottom. Make sure that works. Make sure that works out right. No. It's what we just sewed is on top. I have to flip it over and look because I'm going to have my seams keep going up. So what we just sewed will be on top. If you're going to trim these up so they all match, I would press with my iron. If I'm going to trim with my ruler, I'm going to press with my iron. But I'm going to try not to do that. Have to trim. So your 1/4 inch seam allowance, whatever it is only going to matter that you keep it the same through the whole quilt, through all the blocks. So whatever machine you work on, stay on that same machine because there can be a little bit of difference from machine to machine. So, okay, so now we've got to do another dark. Now, I'm going to look at this piece that I have. And remember, what I sewed last is facing me. Excuse me. And there's no seam here. There's a seam here, 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 no seam here. So I have this piece of fabric. So I have a choice. I don't have enough here to make 2. But if I save it for next time, I've got enough to like on the next set of blocks. So I have the choice. Okay? So I'll set that aside and grab a new strip and let me check if there's any questions. No questions? Okay, so let's go back to the camera. I've got my little stack right next to me, facing the way it's supposed to. Yep, I'm going to drop my needle. Now I'm going to start having seams. Let me move that hand. I'm going to start having seams in both directions because there's a lot of seams to a log cabin. I just have to be careful. So I'm coming up to this seam. I can just hold my finger right there. That keeps that seam down. Okay? I always stop along the way. Remember I told you there's no prize, no trophy for sewing without stopping. Unless you want to consider a crease, not straight. Those are the things you'll be rewarded with. I want to stop and make sure that I look that my underneath one hasn't snuck away. Because sometimes that'll happen. Okay. So next guy, just flipping him over. My fingers close up look really wrinkled. I know someone's probably saying, yeah, they look wrinkly from a distance too. So if I stop with my needle 1 stitch from this edge, I can get this next piece in, butted up against the last fabric. But if I bring the needle down too far, I'm going to hit the needle and have that space. So that's just going to be a matter of that's just a matter of practice. Just make sure that you don't put the new fabric on top of the unit before. Oh, see, I didn't hang on, so I had to stop and push that seam allowance back down because it's facing towards the foot, which means the foot wants to flip it over. And you notice I always stop after the second seam to line up this edge because it tends to want to go left or right, not play nice. So here's that seam. Now I'm paying attention to the next seam. And I stop and I make sure that the last section right here, this last section right here, is lined up on that edge. If it's crooked, when you open it, it's going to be crooked. So just take that little minute to make sure it's straight. Oh, Rhonda, you like the way the strips are going on? So you can see how fast it can be. So this one I wasn't paying attention, and I had my needle past past this unit. So I'll have a little extra trim, and I'm perfectly fine with that. There's no rule. What is the new saying? You do you. Normally I wouldn't pick each of them up and move them, but if I move them to the left, they're going to go on the floor because I'm at the edge. Not on the edge, I'm at the edge. I wasn't paying attention there. So I have this piece left, and I can actually that's got a forgot to cut off the salvage. So I only have a piece like this size. So you can save that if you like, or not. Nobody's looking, they'll never know. I just have to fix this one that I was too busy yakking and not paying attention. I got everybody done now? I think so. Oh, look what happened. Remember I told you when my seam flipped over and I thought I got it back? Can you see? That's okay. We'll be fine. It'll be fine. Don't fret. Don't fret. Oh, I know I had one more to do. So this is all I had at the beginning. When I put my needle down, that's the only extra I had. Just make sure every time you trim, you're straight across this part and this part. And as it gets bigger, you'll use your seams to go by. You have to have a point of reference besides just cutting the edge off. Okay, so I said last color on top, right? Yeah, so that when we press this, that seam's going out. And with a log cabin, you can do as many. So this is a round, and a round, not around, a round. So 2 lights, 2 darks. These do not have to be the same color. If you're doing something scrappy, that's fine. Hopefully I'll be okay with mine. How many squares am I going to get? I don't have any idea. I could figure it out, but I don't really want to. You ever like that? I'm just going to make squares in sets of probably 6 and see how far my fabric goes. That's my abacus of today. That's my ciphering. I'm just going to go. The quilt is something that I want to have the Caspian just as a don't worry, use it all you want kind of quilt. I just thought the fabric was pretty. And I wanted to see how it worked out with a jelly roll. I mean, not a jelly roll, oh my God, fat quarter bundle. So I bent my fabric over. I got to give that a little. Not quite sure how I did that, but okay. So here we've got round 1 done. Center, whatever center you want to have. They don't all have to be the same. I just decided that my blocks aren't going to be all the same, which is, I may not do 6 at a time. I may stay with 4 because my fabrics are going to change along the way. So maybe I'll just stay with the 4 as I see the different fabrics to use. I don't want to have like 10 the same and 3 not. I want to kind of mix it up. So I'll probably do this in 4s. Okay, so there's our center. And I'm using my center, all of them are the same because it gives me something that's the same throughout, because these colors here, they're going to be lights on one side, darks on the other, but they're not always going to be like this one has the flowers here. This one has something different. So I'll have to go back and make 3 more of these. So I'll have 4 and 4 and 4 and I'll just keep going that way. Okay, so center, start with your lights, 2, go to your darks, 2. Do not have to be the same color. This can be blue and this one can be gray, or this one, whatever you want to do. So darks on one side, lights on the other. Okay? Round 1 is done. So when you get to the size you want to make sure you have done a light and a dark, and you'll know because it'll be square. It won't be square if you stopped with the light. Okay? So I've got them all laid out again, facing me, no seam. Okay, and now I got to pick a light. And you go, what? Well, you're on the dark side. Well, I am on the dark side. But remember, when I flip this over, I'm going to be against this area right here. Okay? So if we look at our big one, we've done this part, we're doing this one right here. So most of it is against the light. So you're going to have the edge of the dark and the edge of the dark, but most of the light is against the light. Most of the dark, except this one little edge, is against the dark. Make sense? Okay, so I need a light, right? Well, let's do a stripe. Now, what I do on mine, I'm not sure if you can, well, you can tell a little bit here, is when I do my light side, I go from light, a lot of times this will be white on white. I'll go from light to a little darker light, a little darker light, a little darker light. I know that sounds silly. On my dark, I'm working out towards the darkest. Do you have to do that? No, it's just what I do. That's what appeals to me. These two here are really the same family. And it gets darker as it goes out. Okay? That's generally how it is. But you know what I said? You do you. You want it to appeal to your eye, not to my eye. Unless you're sending it to me. Okay, so we got our strip ready. And hopefully, I don't know if I have another one or if I'll need one. I'll just have to cut another one. Because I will at this point cut as I go. And I might only cut one strip. So if I need another strip, I'm not going to cut two unless as I get out further, I'm going to need longer pieces. But I'm going to be careful not to cut too many strips that I don't need. So let's switch over. Needles down. And remember, all my fabrics, the side with no seam is facing towards me. And then I'm just going to flip it over. So see how you thought when you're looking at it, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to put it on here, but you're not, because you got to put right sides together, which now I'm on the light side. And I want to make sure, and I keep getting my hand in your way. My right hand just keeps butting in. And I'm just making sure that I'm lined up right to that next seam. And once I'm past that seam, I just want to make sure I'm lined up. Oh, sorry. Lined up along this edge for the last part. There's no sense in struggling with it before you get there. Now, I stitched one too many, so I'm not going to be able to butt it right up, and that's okay. Maybe I can. We'll see. That's not going to be my worry of the day. And I'm just checking to make sure Mr. Stripey here didn't try to run off. Ooh, I might make all four of them on one strip. So that means I'll probably need two strips for the next part because it's longer. And you know, normally this hand would be here helping out. See, it's going to be closed. Oh, plenty of room. Plenty of room. So you see when I stop, my hand is on that seam. It's on the seam, but my eyeballs weren't paying attention to my 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so it's getting bigger. It's fun when you have a whole bunch of them. Looks like you're hanging out your laundry. Okay, so let's go ahead and take care of this. Now, you probably were asking, well, why don't I trim this side here? Because I'll end up trimming my regular fabric and I don't want to. So I turn it around. So if you want to do each one as you go, just turn it around, because now my unit of fabric that I've sewn is protected by my ruler. If I did it the other way, let me see if I can show that so you understand what I'm saying. So if I trim, my ruler is protecting the unit I just sewed. Let me just trim this one. So I got that, see how I got that little piece there, and you're thinking, well, I can just put my ruler right here. I'm just going to tell you, you're going to get yourself in trouble, because you've got to get in with the ruler against this fabric without cutting this fabric. Where if I just turn it around, it's quicker to put my ruler right on my fabric to protect it and trim. Does that make sense? And that's all I had left over. So if I've got to, so let me flip everybody over, because I'm doing this live with you the exact way I would do it if you weren't with me. And I always think of that as, this is how it would be for you when you're sewing by yourself. So see what I do, see what works for you. There's no law that says you have to do it my way. I suggest to start with, do it my way, and then you'll find your own little way of, you might change a different way of doing part of it that just works easier for your brain, because everybody's brain is different, thankfully. Because if all our brains were the same, I wonder what brain it would be. That'd be scary. All brains are different. You got a fighting chance. So I need more of this one. All right, so when I added this section on, it took one of my strips. And I remember my strips are half size because they're fat quarter. But I already know I'm going to be going longer now, so I'm going to need a strip and a half. So I know I need to cut 2 strips. So let me set that up there so I don't wreck everything. And remember, I always open my fat quarter up, or my fabric up, just to get an eyeball on, this is the long way. I'm going to cut across this way so I'm not losing that length. Once I cut across here, so if I cut a strip across here, number one, it's short. I'm going to have a lot of them. And it's just going to keep getting shorter. There's no coming back from that. And you'll do it. It'll happen. I've done it. So I just want to line it up as best I can. And I need to make sure before I cut I have a straight edge. Because just because I cut straight before doesn't mean I ended with a straight cut. And that's another thing to think about. If you're cutting a bunch of strips, every 3 or 4 strips, stop and re-straighten your edge. Because you're a human being, and it's not always going to end up being perfect. I know, it's hard to admit, but you are a human. I wouldn't go more than 4 strips without stopping to straighten that edge again. So 2 inches. And I'm kind of moronic about this, so I count 1, 2. Make sure my rule is lined up, top and bottom. And 1 more. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, and I close my, you probably don't see it, but I close my rotary every time I get done sewing. So when I'm waving my rotary in the air, it's closed. Don't worry. I'll behave. Okay, so now I have 2 strips because I know I'm going to need them. And I just got to press out the fold. Let me see if there's any questions. So probably, I'm going to guess probably if 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 you were sewing along and not stopping and showing stuff to somebody, you'd probably be on your 3rd round at least by now, because you just keep going, add a strip, keep going, add a strip, keep going. You kind of get into the groove of it. So where's my little fellas here? So I need to have them. No seam. Last one I put on, facing me. And now you're looking at this. And you're going, oh, but it's on the wrong side. No. We're going to be flipping this right sides together. So now all my lights are on the same side as this. So, because every now and again I stop and I'm sitting there and I go, oh my God, I've done something wrong because this doesn't go on the dark. You just have to remember it needs to be wrong side up. So if it's easier for you to just have it upside down, wrong side up, so you can visually see it, just don't flip it over when you get over to the machine. So I just do it that way. But if you have a moment of, holy cow, that's on the wrong side, wait a minute, let me put right sides together, and now everything makes you just, now you calm down now because your lights are together, okay? But it will happen when you look at it and go, that's not right. All right, so let me switch us over. And so I'm going to do like I did the last time, and when I'm done one strip, I'm going to go on to the next. I'm not sure I did. I was going to say, I'm not sure I got any fabric. So my little pile is next to me with the no seam facing towards me, and I just flip it over. It makes more sense for me for them to be right side up, and I flip them over so they're right sides together. Excuse me. But you'll get into your own little groove, and it may be the same, and it may be different. And again, I'm going to have that seam that's facing towards the presser foot, so it wants to flip over. Okay, stop. Make sure underneath, just the stripey didn't run away. So I get that past that seam. So can you see? Yeah. See right there? How this top one is going to the right a little bit? Just going to bring him over where he belongs. And you want to make sure you hang on to the bitter end. And again, you're not going to sew with one hand, you're going to sew with two. Oh, by golly, I think I'm going to get get a whole one, just a little left over. That's not to say when I get to the longer part that it's going to work out that simply. Oh, I can see my fabric flipped up. My seam allowance flipped up on. And make sure everything's laying nice and flat. Lying nice and flat. So I just have this little piece left, and I've got one more to do. So I'm just going to stitch my way down. You can stop and cut it. I'm just going to stitch my way down. Because I went about 5 stitches more than I needed to, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. And you can see it's much easier if you, if you have to. If you have 2 hands, it's easier. You can see this one's staying nice and straight. And some of it will curve off just because your seam wasn't straight. So now's the time to fix that situation. Okay, so let me switch back. I think at some point this will start getting boring for you because I don't mean boring to stitch, I mean boring to watch. So I'll do one more round just so we have the round finished. And now that they're getting bigger, I'm just going to take care of both sides at one time. And hopefully you're not laying like up on top of your machine like I am. Though you might be. And you'll see what I mean about it's easier to turn this and have your fabric protected under your ruler when you do one. And so I have a pretty good sized piece left. And that was all I had left from the end of the first one. I'm okay with that. If you need to hang on to that piece, that's okay. You can save it, all the little pieces, to make your prom dress. All right, that's just my humor to myself. Okay, so we're going to flip these all over. And this time I'm going to bring up my mat because I know you guys are going to sneak and press. But at least now it's a little bigger. So remember, we're pressing. Okay? Flip that up and just press out. And you notice I'm not going all the way to that edge. So let me do the next one so you can see it from your angle. So I'm gonna press those stitches. I'm gonna set the stitches into the fabric, and I'm pressing out. And you see how my iron isn't going to the end. I don't need it at the end. I just need it on that seam. Now, if I want to go back and just simply do this, okay, that's okay. So if you start to see that you're kind of getting out of whack on your square, wait till you put your dark side on. Make sure you do your whole round before you do the trimming. You just need to remember, whatever you trim this group to, you got to trim the next group too. So don't get carried away with your trimming too much. You might just have some little slivers that you need to take care of. And I am picking up a little bit. I'm trying to pick up enough so you see it, but. And remember, I always tell you when you're ironing, leave it to cool for a second. Don't keep picking it up fast like I am. I'm only doing that because you don't want to really sit and watch me iron. So see, I'm not out here. That's one thing that's good with a small iron when you're doing the small part, because if I had a big iron, it would just take up the whole thing. So maybe we can make it the rule that you can use a little iron. Okay? So we're going to turn our blocks automatically so that the last part we did, or the part with no seam, is facing towards us. Okay? So we got too light, too light, too dark. Now we need another dark. Okay? So we got two sets of light, one set of dark. Okay? Don't be turning this around. Okay, so now we need a dark. Just trying to pick something that because I know I'm going to need more. Oh, you know what? Let's see if I can use up some of my pieces. So that's a long one. So let's see, I'm on the shortest side. So I'm going to be over here. I'm just looking to see, I might be able to get two for this. Otherwise, I'll save it for the longer side. Ooh, it just makes two. So if I had this piece here, and it ended like here, I would save it for the next round when I need a longer piece rather than waste. Okay? But I got enough for two there. Okay, so I put everybody back in order. Let me just check and see if anybody... Is everybody falling asleep? Everybody still awake? I'm going to take that as a yes. I can hear you. Okay. So you understood what I did. I just kind of measured to see with my leftover what would be the best use. Oh, I was trying to just barely get it. There we go. And if it's really just enough fabric, then go ahead and put this one on lined up right at the edge. And again, I know I've said it 20 times, you're going to be using two hands. We're not going to do look mine, no hands here. It just makes it. Couldn't have planned it any better if I'd have tried. When I say it just makes it, it really just makes it. So then, let's see. Got this other piece. So it's as long as the first one. So this time I'm going to go ahead because I really was close. And I'm going to line these right up at the top. So I'm lining up on this side and up here. I don't need to cut my thread in between. Probably help if I had it next to my 1/4" guide. That would be helpful. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I won't make it. This one might have been short. Oh, just enough again. So they must have both been the same size, and that would make sense. So when I'm lining up my fabric, I am pulling it a bit towards me to make sure it's nice and flat. I'm not yanking it towards me. I'm just making sure that this is all nice and flat. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh, Persis, you're awake. Rhonda, you're good? Thank you, girls. Okay, so that's all I had left of the second one by lining it up. The first one, it came out exactly like there's just thread in between. Now I got scissors here somewhere. Literally, there was only thread in between. I need to sew live more often because it comes out better than when I'm by myself. Well, maybe it's because I have someone to see. Look, I did it. Maybe that's it. So you're going to laugh. That's all that's left. Can you see those two little pieces? That's all that's left from that first strip. Makes me proud. And you don't want to trim from this side because you can't see under this strip. See that? I can't see where that fabric is. So always trim from the back. Oh, I got a little sliver there. And I'm looking, every time I'm looking along here, I'm kind of looking, well, I bring my ruler up more at each end. So I'll be past using this ruler, or I can just make sure I line up with the seam. Okay, so that's what's left from that second one. I keep throwing them in the trash, but I lied, it was this piece. I keep throwing them in the trash, and sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. The pieces are so light, they don't have enough oomph to always make it to the trash can, because I've got it too far away. Okay, so I guess we're going to iron again. So remember, look how nice it looks back there. So the last fabric we sewed with is on the top. See, you can come right across this seam because it's held by stitches. It's when you've got a piece of fabric out there with no one to hang on to. Is anybody going to try this out? And you can do, if you if you were doing a table runner, sure, you would only need, depending what size they are, you only need 5 or 6 of these. The thing is when one's done, they'll all be done. And that's did I do them all right? That's a nice feeling when you know, rather than you do one block at a time, and it's so much more time. Okay, so let's make sure the first thing we always want to do is turn it, fabric with no seam facing towards us. Okay, now I need this fabric again. Oh, I've only got 1 strip left. I'm going to be cutting another strip of this one too, because I won't get 4 out of that. So let me make sure I have more before I do that. That's another thing. Before you put a strip on, make sure you get another one. And again, I'm going to straighten my edge. And I'm only taking a little bit off. And I'm just going to cut 1 strip. And I know some people will cut more, but remember, I have a bunch of different fabrics. I want to get through some of each of all of those before I start back and use the ones I've already used again, if that makes sense. Hopefully. Okay. So, again, because I know this is going to happen, when you're laying your blocks next to your strip, you're going to go, oh my God, it's the wrong side. Just remember, you're going to flip it over. So when you flip it over, and I'll do this myself, do a visual just to be sure. Now I flip this over. Now all my darks are on the dark side. Okay? I'm just repeating it because it's going to happen. I don't want you to panic. Oh, Precious, you like doing it this way? It really, honestly, if I wasn't talking through this with you, I'd be close to like the last one. And again, you can make these as big as you want to or as small as you want to. I would say you want, well, this one's just 2 rows, but I only did that because I keep this for my sample in my resource book, and it fits in my page protector. So if you did 2 rounds, that would end up being 8 inches, so it would be 7.5 finished. So that's what 2 rounds would look like. That looks fine too. Okay, so let's switch over. And this will be the last round we do together because it's just going to keep being the same. I'm just going to have to use more strips as I go. So I'm not going to bother measuring how many fit on here because this is as long as my strip can be. I can't make it any longer. So I'm just going to get started. Now, don't pull your fabric towards you too much because then you're stretching it and then your strips are going to be kind of wavy. So I'm going to make a concerted effort. Isn't going to matter. I'm going to make a concerted effort to get as close as I can, which I'm going to do anyway. But I can only get two rounds on this one, but two units on this one. And make sure this bottom strip isn't just, flopping in the breeze. You want some tension on that as well. That's why you're going to use two hands. Oops, sorry. So this hand is kind of holding that strip. Once I have it lined up, I'm really holding both pieces, the underneath and the top one. And see, I don't have enough, but this time I'm not going to sew on this one, because I'll be able to use that somewhere. So I'm just going to go to my next strip. Don't try to get real cute and try to squeeze one in and you get down to the end and you're a ½ inch short. You'll do it. We can't help ourselves. And you could always pin them on, but pinning them on sort of defeats some of the purpose of getting through this quickly. So you can see my thumb is here, and my thumb can pull back that bottom strip. My thumb has to do some work. My fingers can't do all the work. My thumb's got to feel needed. Oh. So I had to stop because I could see my seam allowance was flipping over. Okay, so let's see what we have. So see, I only had this little bit. Not going to throw it away or anything. I'm going to keep it. If nothing else, if you go back about 3 Thursday nights ago, I think it was, when I did the little houses, small houses, I forget what I called it. And it's made from all scraps. This would be perfect in there. Now I'm really getting too big for my britches, too big for my table. And I can see I got just a tiny sliver. So I'll look to see if we have any last minute questions as soon as I get these pressed. And I can see at the bottom, I've got a little piece that's just jutting out, just a little tiny piece. So I'm going to fix that. Just a little piece. So make sure every time you're checking both places. Don't get crazy. Okay, so let's get all these things out of the way. So again, last piece we just sewed is on top. If you find that this strip is wavy, that means you were just letting it run wild underneath when you were stitching. So make sure you're hanging on to that strip and your unit when you're stitching. And again, like I said, you'll have both hands working, so you should be okay with that. But if it's starting to get wavy, that's the reason. Is this guy didn't have any tension on him, and he was just under there, you know, running wild. Just gonna shut my iron off because I can't help myself. Okay, so here's our 4 blocks. Hopefully they're all the same size. And again, your 1/4 inch, don't keep trying to adjust it. Once you start sewing with your 1/4 inch seam, you're going to keep that through the whole quilt, because as long as it's always the same, it's going to be fine. So if you're a scant, you're a little more, it doesn't matter as long as you keep it the same. So you're a little freer this time. So there we are. And again, I'll keep going. So I've got 2, what have I got? 2. And this one is, so this one is 4 rows of each, 4 rounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. That way I don't have to make as many. But it's going to get a little harder out here. So we'll see how far I get. I think I've got quite a few darks to be okay with. So there we go. Okay, so let's check and see, does anybody have any questions? So give it a whirl, because and this is like an introduction into regular chain piecing anyways. And when you're working on a quilt or a table runner or anything where you're making more than one of the same exact block, you can do this. But always, always make one whole block first to make sure you've got it right in your mind. Before you do 6 of them the same, and they'll be the same and they'll be all wrong. So do one whole one first, kind of acclimate yourself to the block. Then you'll have that sample to go by, so you'll know what fabric you put where. And you may want different fabrics on the next block. If you do that, then you won't be able to chain piece. So as long as it's the same fabrics, same blocks, in your group. So mine are different fabrics all over, but I'm doing 4 at a time with the same fabrics. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's time for school dismissal. So thanks everybody for joining in. If you would be kind enough, if you haven't subscribed, if you'd hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And what's the other one? Ring the bell, hit the bell, so that when I come on live or I load a video up, you'll get notification of it. And let's see, this is Memorial Weekend. So the weekend after this, the Saturday after this, I believe it's the first Saturday of June. I'll do a Sunday morning live. And I'm going to be doing binding. So I'll make an announcement post on Facebook a few days before. So you'll be able to watch that, or you can watch it later. So thanks again, everyone, for joining in. I appreciate you stopping by. Have a great Memorial Weekend, and make sure you get out and get some fresh air. Bye now.